Walters Sports Bar is available for private events. Visit waltersdc.com/private events for more information.
And welcome to Nats Chat for Wednesday, June 19th, 2024. What is Juneteenth 2024, along with MASNsports.com Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman, who was at Nationals Park. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. We on Tuesday had something rare these days, a Nationals loss, just their second loss in 10 games, a 5-0 loss to the Arizona Diamondbacks at Nationals Park in Game 1 of a 3-game series. The Nats for this regular season now 35-37. But we also on Tuesday had big news regarding the Nats' top 2 prospects becoming official. The Nats on Tuesday activated AAA outfielder James Wood from the 7-day injured list, which he had been on since May 28th due to a right hamstring injury. And the Nats on Tuesday officially promoted outfielder Dylan Crews from AA Harrisburg to AAA Rochester. Each guy in the lineup for the Rochester Red Wings on Tuesday evening when they did get hammered at the Syracuse Chiefs at 12-2. Wood as the Red Wings starting left fielder and number 2 batter, 0 for 2 with a walk. Crews as the Red Wings starting center fielder and number 1 batter, 0 for 5 with an outfield assist. But we are getting closer to both James Wood and Dylan Crews playing for the Nats at the major league level. And Mark, the thought of Wood and Crews playing for the Nats at the major league level offers some comfort given how bad the Nats offense was on Tuesday evening.
You know, Al, it's hard not to think that the presence of one or both of those guys would at least have given them a little bit of a fighting chance on Tuesday against the great Slade, Ciccone, and the 2 relievers the Diamondbacks threw out there. Maybe it wouldn't have made a difference. Neither guy got a hit at AAA, but boy, there was not a lot going on offensively in this game. And so just that tease, that notion that we may be seeing both of these guys in the big leagues before season's end, and in James Wood's case, probably a lot sooner than that. Hopefully that lets everyone get through the next 18 hours or so until the next game, feeling a little bit better and not harp too much on this one performance because it was not a good one.
Much more on James Wood and Dylan Crews in moments, but before we move any further on this installment of the Nats Chat podcast, we do want to send a congratulations to our friend Tim Shovers and his wife Kira and the entire family. Wonderful news, the birth of Layla Ruth Shovers. She was born on Monday, June 17th, 7:53 p.m., 7 pounds, 15 ounces, 20.5 inches. Everyone is doing well. Layla has begun her age 0 season. We are very happy for everyone. And we do want to thank Alex Gerson, who is performing Tim's many duties while Tim is on paternity leave. While Tim is on the paternity list. So thank you, Alex. But Tim Shovers, Mark, not only now in charge of this podcast, but in charge of a daughter. I'm not sure which task is more daunting. I know which one is more important, though. That's for sure.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But I'll tell you what, he thinks he stays up late right now, working the wee hours to edit our show so wonderfully every single night. He has no idea what's coming at him now after that. It's by far the hardest job you'll ever have, but by far the most rewarding one as well. So a huge mazel tov to Tim and Kira. We can't wait to meet Layla. We were so excited to get the text from him late Monday night, knowing that that was coming at some point during the day. And Tim, take all the time you need. Trust me, you're going to need it. Don't rush back. It's not worth it. Enjoy this time while you have it.
Absolutely. All right, so we will do more on the Nats loss on Tuesday evening. But look, if you're a Nats fan, the excitement from Tuesday was James Wood and Dylan Crews. The news had been reported on Monday, became official on Tuesday. James Wood, Dylan Crews, 2 of the top 6 prospects in baseball per MLB Pipeline. Wood is the number 4 overall prospect. Crews is the number 6 overall prospect. I know that Davey Martinez talked to you guys some prior to Tuesday evening's game about Wood and Crews. It certainly would seem like James Wood, his promotion to the majors is imminent, although we have felt that way for a while, so I suppose we can't assume anything. But, Crews, in theory, is going to be at AAA for at least a little while. But the fact that these things happen on the same day like this, I don't know. Maybe it's coincidence. Maybe it was strategic timing. But what do you think about where we are right now with Wood and Crews?
It sure worked out well. I don't think it was purely intentional, but it did work out very nicely with the timing we've been waiting to see the two of them play together. Now, they've done it. They were at Double A at the end of last season. They were obviously in spring training together. But just to see that lineup for the first time at Triple A, Dylan Crews leading off in center field, James Wood batting second in left field. If that doesn't get you excited, I don't know what else will, aside from that same lineup happening in Washington, D.C. instead of Rochester. And, soon enough, we hope that will happen. With Wood, they took almost 4 weeks to bring him back from the hamstring injury. I think we both knew they were going to slow play that. There was no reason to rush it. He was dominating at the time. Don't do anything that might put him in a bad position when he came back. I also think that they're going to want to give him some time to reestablish himself, show that he's healthy again and productive. Again, you may have noticed he came out of the game after 5 innings. That was by design. That was planned going into it. Mike Rizzo said earlier in the afternoon that he was only going to play the 5, that they're not going to have him play 9 innings right away in his first day back. He'll get to that point, of course. If we want to look ahead, and I know we've done this already and we've been proven wrong multiple times, but why not? It's what we do. I'm looking at a long road trip here coming up this weekend, Colorado, San Diego, Tampa. And then I'm looking at a big homestand, July 4th week, Mets and Cardinals. Boy, it would be nice to see James Wood make his Major League debut sometime during that homestand, if not be there for that entire homestand. He's still got to show he's healthy. He's still got to show he can hit again after coming off the IL. But in a perfect world, boy, it does seem like that would make a lot of sense to have him come up the first week of July.
Would be very exciting for sure. We know the deal with Wood. The Nats have been conservative with him. I don't necessarily blame them for that. But, we thought going into the season that by now both Wood and Crews potentially could be playing at the major league level. That has not happened, in part because of injury. Wood suffered that hamstring injury. Crews, as you may recall, himself dealt with a hamstring injury in April. He also got off to a bad start to this season. Crews did not have a good April for Double A Harrisburg, but has since picked things up. So with Dylan Crews, if we're thinking about a timeline for him to be promoted to the majors this season, presumably July is out the window. Do you think August, or do you think that is too soon?
Well, I think I'd said to you at some point along the way as we're trying to figure out when this is going to happen. To me, July 1st was the key date. Does he get to AAA before July 1st? If he did, then I think there's a chance of seeing him here before season's end. Probably September, but it could be August if he takes off and really does well at that level, which you hope he does. But we saw a little slow going at Double A. It got a lot better over the last month and a half, especially runners in scoring position, especially starting to hit for some power extra bases, even though not a ton of homers, a lot of doubles and some triples as well. So I'm guessing there's going to be an adjustment period at AAA. It is a more demanding level for a hitter because you are now facing guys who've either already been in the big leagues or are close to reaching the big leagues themselves. So you're facing a different style of pitcher. I think there will be an adjustment period for him, but I think we've known all along this guy's really advanced. He works really hard. He's going to figure things out. It's just a matter of how long it takes for him. So in my mind, I'm probably looking at September, maybe sometime in August, if he just really takes off there and does well. I would hope he doesn't spend the rest of the season at AAA. By calling him up at this point, not even waiting till July or till the All-Star break, that at least says to me that the Nationals are considering it, that they believe he could be ready before the end of the season. Now, there's another question with all this is where are they going to play? Outfield-wise. And I thought this was notable. Davey Martinez said that for now, they want them to focus on just playing one position at AAA, and then you can always adjust based on what the team's need might be. So the fact that James Wood started in left field, he'd played everywhere so far this year, but center field was his top position when he was healthy at AAA. He's in left field now. That to me says Jacob Young has kind of taken the center field job here, and the defensive work he's done has been stellar, and he's getting on base enough and doing enough offensively to stake a claim to that job. And we know Lane Thomas isn't going anywhere for now. So that says to me that they are prepping James Wood to play left field in the big leagues relatively soon, and maybe Jesse Winker moved to a DH spot or ultimately traded by the deadline. Crews in center for now, they're basically saying we view him as the better defensive outfielder than James Wood, but we don't really know ultimately where the need's going to be at the big league level. I don't think any of us expected Jacob Young to seize that job the way he has so far. Now, maybe that changes. Maybe he cools off. Maybe ultimately the need's in center field. Maybe eventually it's in right field. We don't know. But I think it's interesting to note that, to me, it seems like they're prepping James Wood to take over in left field here relatively soon. And Cruz, they view ultimately as a guy who can play center field in the big leagues, but might as well let him play there now and wait to see if you need to move him to a corner spot, depending on where the opening is by the time he's ready.
I'd be interested to know if they're thinking left field for James Wood this season, but perhaps right field for James Wood next season and moving forward. Left field is the least important of the three outfield positions in terms of defense. You have a guy in Wood who's good enough to play center field. Do you really want to start him off in the least important of the three outfield positions defensively? So I would think maybe this season left field, let him get his feet wet in the majors, but moving forward, let's move him up the defensive hierarchy and get him at least in a corner outfield spot for next season. I also would say this about Jacob Young. He's doing very well defensively, yes. Offensively, he's done some nice things. The numbers still are pretty underwhelming. I would not in any way block Dylan Cruz from playing center field for the sake of Jacob Young. Now, this season, it may well be that Cruz doesn't get promoted to the majors. I hope he does, but maybe he doesn't. Who knows? But, I think if you really believe in Dylan Cruz, you don't let Jacob Young block him in center field. You salute Jacob Young. He could be a really good fourth outfielder for you, but the offense has not been good enough to warrant him playing that position over Dylan Cruz and putting Cruz in a corner outfield spot, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. I just know how baseball people think sometimes, and just by virtue of having gotten here first, there is a little bit of you don't lose your job if you're already here and already showing that you can play the position. Now, I agree. It's really about the offense for Jacob Young. His defense has been stellar. He's one of the best defensive players any position in baseball right now. His range has been phenomenal. I was thinking about this today. Like, the Nationals have had some center fielders who had excellent range. Jacob Young is right there with any of them, maybe better than any of them. He is that good to me. Now, the arm, maybe not the same thing as some other guys, but his range has been just out of this world good. And as far as James Wood ultimately to right field, I get what you're saying, and I think that's probably true. This reminds me of Bryce Harper first came up, and they put him in left field because Jason Worth was already in right. And that went on for a few seasons. It was a while till they made that switch. Now, Bryce also played some center field because that's where the need was. He was not as good there. I do think ultimately James Wood profiles as a right fielder. But I think as long as Lane Thomas is here and knowing the arm that he has in right field, they might be inclined to stick with him even beyond this year, assuming that Lane is back next year. I could see that happening for one more year before that switch would finally be made. It'll be interesting to see. We're looking way ahead. A lot of stuff's going to happen between now and then. We don't know what exactly is going to work out. But it's kind of fun to consider the possibilities, right? Given what we've been through and where we are now.
It is very much so. And with Lane Thomas, he came up last season regarding the trade deadline. Has not come up as much this season, although John Morosi of MLB Network put out a post on X on Monday saying that Lane Thomas and also Kyle Finnegan and Hunter Harvey are drawing trade interest. Lane Thomas is under team control through next season. If he continues to do well, now might be the time to deal him. So maybe when James Wood comes up, Lane Thomas is no longer here playing right field. We shall see. And by the way, I love this. The Rochester Red Wings, the official account on X, 3:38 p.m. on Tuesday afternoon, had Dylan Cruz merch ready to go. Already was pimping Dylan Cruz merch. How long had Rochester had that ready to go?
Get it now while it's hot because it may not last for long and it may become a collector's item soon enough if he does what he's supposed to do at AAA.
Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 5 million members. It's the most fun and exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats for your shot to win up to 100 times your cash. I made my first $10 deposit and received an instant $10 bonus. And if you have the skills, you can play for a shot of turning your $10 into $1,000. And playoff time is the best time to join the Prize Picks community of over 5 million members who have already downloaded the app. Prize Picks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Download the app today and use the code BLUEWIRE for a first deposit match up to $100. That's a first deposit match of up to $100 when you download the app and use the code BLUEWIRE. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
Whether you're a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all understand the importance of mental and physical well-being and proper recovery for top-notch performance. That's why I'm excited that Unified Healing is sponsoring podcasts on the Blue Wire Network. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by Energy Enhancement System, or EE System. If you haven't heard of the EE System yet, then you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. Wherever you are across the globe, access to a center is easy and affordable. Interested in experiencing the EE System technology for yourself? Go to unifiedhealing.com/bluewire to learn more and find a center near you. That's unified, UNIFYD, healing.com/bluewire. No material or testimonials on the Unified Healing website are intended to be viewed as medical advice or a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, including EE System.
Well, the Nats offense in this 5-0 loss to the Diamondbacks on Tuesday evening, not good. This actually may have been the Nats' worst offensive game of the season, and I know that that's saying a lot, but you tell me, name me a worse offensive performance than this one. No runs, just 4 hits, which were a double and 3 singles. No walks, 0 for 1 with runners in scoring position. The Diamondbacks starting pitcher was Slade Ciccone, who came into this game with an ERA of .670 over 9 games, including 8 starts for this regular season, but the immortal Slade Ciccone tossed 6 scoreless innings with 6 strikeouts versus no walks. The Nats' 4 hits in the game came from just 2 players, C.J. Abrams and Jesse Winker. Abrams as the Nats starting shortstop and number 1 batter, 2 for 4 with 2 singles, but he was thrown out in an attempted steal of second base, and yet another example of the Nats' inefficiency on stolen bases recently. Bottom of the 4th, leadoff opposite field single to left center field, but thrown out in the attempted steal of second base. Winker was the Nats starting left fielder and number 3 batter in his return from a 1-game absence caused by a right knee ailment, so that ended up not being that big of a deal. MRI exam showed no structural damage. Winker missed just the 1 game, 2 for 3 with a double and a single, and that was it in terms of the Nats offense in this game.
I think this was easily their worst offensive performance of the year, and there's a few reasons that I say that. Slade Ciccone was a first-round pick, so it's not like he had no resume coming into this, but his major league numbers across parts of 2 seasons have not been anything that special. And there are games that you see somebody dominate on the mound and you say to yourself, boy, he was really good tonight, and it didn't matter who he was facing, and that was a dominant performance. I didn't feel that watching this. No offense to him. The Nationals players themselves, they were insisting that this guy had great stuff, that he was throwing it 4 strikes with movement on everything that he threw. I'll listen to them and say, okay, the guy had a really good night, more power to him. But here's the thing. They did not draw a walk in this game. And the reason they didn't draw a walk in this game, obviously they never got to a 4-ball count. They never got to a 3-ball count. Not a single hitter on the team reached a 3-ball count in the game. Now, I get it. The guy's throwing strikes. You can't just sit there and take strikes, and next thing you know, it's 0-2 and you're striking out. But come on. That, to me, the outs were so quick and the contact was so weak that it felt to me like somewhere along the way, you've got to make an adjustment. You can't just keep going up there doing the same thing and expecting it's going to be different. A couple of hard hit balls, but not that much. You got to make the guy work. He didn't have to work at all in this game. I mean, they pulled him after 6 innings, only 70 pitches. So it's not like they would have let him go that deep. Try to get the pitch count up. Try to get him out of there. Do something different. It was nothing offensively for them, and to me, that made this the weakest performance of the season.
Yeah, Ciccone getting pulled felt like a gift to the Nats, but they ended up not doing much against that Diamondbacks bullpen. The Nats starting pitcher for this 5-0 loss to the Diamondbacks on Tuesday evening, Jake Irvin. He had been so good, he had been so consistently good, but he ended up having an off outing, 4 runs in 5 innings. Understand, Jake Irvin had allowed 5 runs over his previous 4 starts. He, in this game, allowed 4 runs. He gave up 8 hits, which were a home run, a triple, a double, and 5 singles. He was unlucky via some soft contact, but Irvin in the Diamondbacks' 2-run first gave up a 2-run home run by Ketel Marte to right center field, despite having had Marte down in the count at one point 1-2. The homer went a projected 414 feet per Statcast, so that was not soft contact. Also, Irvin issued 4 walks, and that stood out as much as anything. Nats pitchers have done such a good job this season of avoiding the walk. Irvin in this game did not avoid the walk. He recorded just 2 strikeouts. He over his 5 innings threw a whopping 97 pitches, 59 strikes versus 38 balls. He did not have a single clean inning. And there also was this to his outing, and this was wacko. He had an inning-ending double play in each of 4 consecutive innings, the second through the 5th inning. So his outing could have been a lot worse than 4 runs in 5 innings, if not for those 4 double plays.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think he was fortunate to get out of this with only the 4 runs. There was traffic all night long, and he somehow managed to get out of it and minimize the damage as best as he could with some huge double plays to get out of that stuff. I'm not quite sure how he pulled that off, to be honest, because he was not on at all. And the way you could tell, like you said, he hadn't walked more than 2 batters in any game this year. He walks 4 in this one. The first 3 innings, leadoff walk in each of those 3 innings. So you could tell something is off. That's not who he normally is. And, the thing that I wondered, and Davey kind of shot down the idea, maybe he's just saying it to be nice and not to throw anybody under the bus, but it felt to me like, okay, his first inning is 30 pitches, long inning. It's a hot, muggy night. He goes back in the dugout, and the Nats lineup in the bottom of the first sees 17 pitches. That was actually one of their longer innings. The next inning was 5 pitches they saw, then 13. These innings are happening so quickly. Did he have enough time just to cool down the dugout, change out a sweat-soaked jersey, take a sip of Gatorade? Like, he was back out on the mound over and over again, and I wonder if that just caught up with him at some point. That's not an easy assignment for anyone. Now, again, he's not going to make excuses for that, and he did find a way to get through it all. But the leadoff walk, 3 straight innings, kind of made me feel like he wasn't ready to start those innings, and maybe that's in part because the offense was so bad and made out so quickly that he was back out there before he even had a chance to catch his breath.
It's entirely possible. I mean, I would say he was bad from the get-go. Like, that first inning was not good, so it did seem like he was off. But, with Irvin, to your point, he does have this Strasburgian quality about him to where he does not handle the heat well. He sweats like a hog. We've seen that with him. And with this being an especially hot day in the Washington, D.C. area, I don't think it's unreasonable to think that the weather, the climate got to him, because it was uncomfortable outside on this Tuesday in the area.
Yeah, and he's had issues before. We talked about it. He's not the only one. I remember Cade Cavalli had it in his major league debut, and we know Strasburg always dealt with it. Now, the funny thing, Jake Irvin pitched in Oklahoma in college, so I think he knows how to pitch in heat. Now, I grew up in Minnesota, very different environment there for the most part. He doesn't make excuses for it again, but if you don't have a great grip on the ball, that can explain poor command. It seems to add up, but I'll tell you what, he's going to have to learn. If it is actually a problem, he's going to have to learn how to cope with it, because if he wants to be a successful big league pitcher in Washington, D.C. for years, he's going to have to pitch well on nights like this when the conditions are really not very enjoyable to be out there for.
Well, Irvin now has reached the 15 start mark for this regular season. It's crazy. I mean, 15 starts, it's like half a regular season. This was game 72 of the 162. The season is happening, people. We're almost at the numerical midpoint here, but Irvin, even with the rough outing on Tuesday evening, 15 starts, ERA a 3.24, whip of 112. You certainly would have signed up for those numbers going into this season. That's bullpen in this 5-0 loss to the Diamondbacks on Tuesday evening was mostly good. 3 Nats relievers combined to allow 1 run in 4 innings. Jacob Barnes allowed 1 run in 2 innings. Jordan Weems tossed a scoreless top of the 8th. And Tanner Rainey, we did have a Tanner Rainey sighting. He tossed a scoreless top of the 9th despite giving up a 1-out single and issuing a 2-out walk. Beyond the James Wood-Dylan Cruz news, there also was this with the Nats on Tuesday, Josiah Gray and Cade Cavalli news. And the news actually is pretty encouraging. It sounds like we may be down to a final minor league rehab start for Josiah Gray.
Potentially. He's going to pitch Wednesday for Harrisburg. And if he's efficient enough, feels well enough, he can go up to 6 innings, 75 to 80 pitches. Now, he's not always the most efficient guy, so I could see him hitting that pitch count by the 5th, if not sooner, in which case maybe we're talking about him needing a little more time. But when I asked Davey Martinez, could this be his last rehab start, if it all goes well, he kind of paused and said, well, I don't want to declare anything. I want to see how he does. I want to talk to him after that. He certainly didn't rule out the possibility, though, that it could be the case. And I think it's awfully interesting how these things line up. Josiah Gray's rehab start is happening at the same time that Patrick Corbin is pitching a big league game. Been wondering forever, when he comes back, whose spot does he take? If you're going to keep him right in rotation, he's in line to take over Corbin's spot. Now, again, still things have to happen between now and then. But if he has a really good night in Harrisburg and gets the pitch count up and gets through 5 or 6 innings, and if Corbin were to struggle again against his former team, the Diamondbacks, I think it's entirely possible that 5 days from then, we will be seeing Josiah Gray take over Patrick Corbin's spot in the rotation.
Going to be very interesting with that. And then with Cade Cavalli, his rehab had been put on pause. We were wondering when would the next rehab outing come. If it did not come soon, what might that suggest? But it turns out that another minor league rehab start is coming soon.
Yeah, he will go Friday for Wilmington. It may only be about 3 innings, even at most. So it does look like they've backed off some. He's going to have to build himself back up again. But the good news is everything seems to be fine physically. It really does sound like they wanted to use this opportunity the last 2.5 weeks or so for him to work on his mechanics, iron some things out. I don't think they were pleased with just the way that went in his last rehab start. I don't think they were worried that it was physical. I think it was more about let's get him totally right so that he's throwing his pitches the way we want him to. Now, back in the game again, we'll see. And he's got to then build himself back up. So it's going to be several more of those before we're talking about the next move and whether he's ready to make his season debut. But good to see that he is ready to pitch in games again, that this was not something that was going to require an actual shutdown or further medical examination as far as we know. He's fine. He just needs to now start pitching again. Good mechanics, hopefully good results, and then they can make that decision. Is he rejoining the big league rotation, or would he be optioned to AAA until they think the time is finally right?
And while this was not national-specific news, this was massive baseball news on Tuesday night. The San Francisco Giants on Tuesday night announced the passing of one of the greatest players ever, Willie Mays, who passed away per the Giants peacefully on Tuesday afternoon at the age of 93. There is so much that can be said about Willie Mays. I guess I would say this. So, to me, the greatest baseball player ever is Babe Ruth because of his excellence as both a pitcher and an outfielder. But if you had to say, okay, you can't say Babe Ruth, who is the greatest player ever? There is a compelling argument for Willie Mays. And if you go by Baseball Reference's wins above replacement career-wise, Babe Ruth is number 1 by miles at 182.6. Willie Mays is number 3 among position players at 156.2. Between Mays and Ruth is Barry Bonds. That's a separate conversation, as we know. But the knock on Babe Ruth will always be, well, he didn't play against black players. And so that is something that you have to note when you talk about the greatness of Babe Ruth. Now, that's not his fault, but that is part of the conversation. Willie Mays excelled as a defensive outfielder, excelled, of course, offensively, played for so long. He was sensational. And, again, I would say Ruth is the best ever, but there's an argument for Mays. He was a spectacular player, and very sad news on Tuesday night.
Yeah, really sad, and it happened late in the game and across baseball. Word started to spread, and the unfortunate timing of Thursday night, MLB having the game at Rickwood Field in Birmingham to celebrate the Negro Leagues, initially hoping that Willie Mays, who played there a very long time ago, could attend, and the other day he had come out and said that he wasn't going to be able to travel, that he wasn't up to it. And I don't know if any of us really knew just how dire it was. Maybe he did or didn't know at the time. So unfortunate timing, obviously, for that. A couple things. One, I agree with you that when you ask me, like, who's the greatest player of all time, I say it's Babe Ruth. Mostly because compare him to everybody else of his time, and there's nobody who's even in the conversation. He was better than individual teams at that time. Now, put Babe Ruth in the 1950s and 60s against those great players of that era, I don't know. Would he have been better than them or significantly better than them? I don't know. Willie Mays played at a time when there were other elite ball players of similar type of skill. What I would say about Willie Mays, to me, he was the model for the modern baseball player. Nobody else was going to be like Babe Ruth. That was a once in a lifetime, very different time. But think about how many modern players today try to be Willie Mays and are successful to some extent. You're maybe not all going to get all the way up to that. But all the tools that you have, the ability to hit, the ability to hit for power, the ability to run the bases, the ability to catch anything in the outfield, to throw. I mean, he was the first real 5-tool player. And ever since then, scouts, baseball people, everyone is trying to find the next player who fits that mold. And there have been plenty who have similar characteristics. I don't know that any has ever put it all together for as long as Willie Mays had. I think I knew this, but just to actually see it written down, 24-time All-Star. 24 times. Unbelievable. And beyond that, the personality that he played with during his career and that he continued to have throughout the rest of his life as a joyous ball player who showed that joy to everyone to see and experience. I got to see him in person, I think, twice in my career. It wasn't anything where I really got to talk to him myself, but I was part of a small group of reporters that happened upon him at the World Series many years back in San Francisco. And just to sit back and listen to him tell stories was remarkable. And then there was one game when Dusty Baker was managing the Nationals and they were playing in San Francisco, and Dusty, of course, knew Willie very well. He invited him into the clubhouse, and he sat there and took photos with all the players and talked to them all. And a lot of modern players don't necessarily really appreciate the old-timers. There wasn't a guy in that room who didn't know who Willie Mays was and didn't really appreciate the significance of their opportunity to get to meet him. So even if I didn't have any particular interaction with him myself, just being in the room with him and seeing major leaguers like Ryan Zimmerman and Bryce Harper and Jason Worth with jaws dropped to see Willie Mays was really special. And it shows you just how important a legacy he has. Whether he's the best ever or not, there's no doubt that he's on the short list of the most important and best ball players of all time.
Well, you don't have to be a baseball expert to know the nickname, the Say Hey Kid. I mean, that's a very well-known nickname. Your career regular season slash line for Willie Mays: batting average .301, on base percentage .384, slugging percentage .557, OPS .940, OPS plus .155. And, you know, in sports, there is this thing of you don't want to be Willie Mays with the Mets. That's come up a lot over the years of you don't want to be an aging legend playing for another team and stumbling in the outfield. That's been said many times about Willie Mays. Here's what does not get said. Willie Mays played for the Mets for 2 seasons, 72-73. His 73 season, his final season with the Mets, not good. His 72 season with the Mets, very good. And I don't know why this doesn't come up. 1972, Willie Mays' age 41 season, regular season OPS of .848, OPS plus .145. That was over 242 plate appearances. So this guy in the pre-PED era, age 41 season, coming through for the Mets to that extent, over 69 games with them that season. Also played for the Giants over 19 games in that season. But to me, like, if you're going to talk about Willie Mays with the Mets, that should come up, what he did in that season, and not just remembering the bad with him. But what a career. His first major league season, 1951, his final one, 1973. Incredible longevity, incredible production.
And maybe the most iconic individual play of all time for the catch in the World Series. I mean, it's still hard for me to fully imagine it because we never saw the Polo Grounds for real to understand just how far that was in center field. And I don't know that the old grainy footage truly does it justice, but every catch that's ever happened since is compared to that one. So even beyond everything else, the career totals, the importance, all that stuff, you can boil it down to one play. How many guys in the history of baseball can you just say one particular play and you immediately know what you're talking about and it's iconic and attached to one person's name? What a legacy. Just incredible.
Game 1, 1954 World Series. Vic Wertz, the victim, and it is known simply as the catch. When you have a play that is known as the catch, that says it all. So rest in peace to Willie Mays. If you want a shout-out delivered on this podcast, email Tim Shovers while he is on paternity leave. He can still get emails. natchatpodcast@gmail.com. And we have a shout-out to deliver on behalf of the Davis family. The Davis family kicking off the summer with a road trip to Cooperstown, New York today to see Reese and his Rockville Rockets 12U team play teams from all over the country. all week long. Making the drive today with Reese are his mom, dad, his brother Brennan, his sister Eleanor, and his grandparents. Everyone so excited to be cheering him and the Rockets on all week. To top it off, today is Reese's 12th birthday, and we're happy to celebrate with him all week. Happy birthday, Reese. We love you. Well, yes, happy birthday, Reese. That is quite a trip to Cooperstown, playing games in Cooperstown, and the Davis family should have an excellent time.
You know, it's funny. I actually have a family trip coming up to Cooperstown very soon with my 12-year-old son, who's never been there. He's not playing on Doubleday Field, and I don't think we'll be there in time to catch this game. But good luck to you all. Have a great time there. It's a magical place. I'm really excited to go back. I haven't been there in about 20 years. Anybody who hasn't ever been, make a point to get to Cooperstown. It is 100% worth it.
Well, this has been quite the installment of the podcast. We have covered a lot of different things. A birth, a death, a bad game for the Nats, big off-the-field news for the Nats, all kinds of stuff going on here. We appreciate everyone listening. You can always hit us up on X at Nats_chat. You can email the show, natschatpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on our website, natschatpodcast.com, in which you can buy a Nats Chat podcast t-shirt. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. Game 2 for the Nats against the Diamondbacks Wednesday afternoon at 4:05. The former Diamondback Patrick Corbin will be the Nats starting pitcher. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast.